I'm up here at Van's place, and today we are hooking up a 400 watt solar power system. This is going to be a backup system. He has another system he uses with an EcoFlow, but we're going to set this one up to double his capacity so he can run larger appliances, and in wintertime he'll have a little bit more sun power than what he's had working over summer. Now, we are working with some portable, flexible panels here. This is 400 watts, even though there's 5 panels. This is a 400 watt set of panels made by All Powers that we put up here. And what I want to talk about is first, recognizing where you want the best place to set your panels here, okay? And there's 2 considerations that you want to do. One is you want to have them close enough to your controller and to your battery and where your house, wherever it is, that you don't have to run these a long distance. One of the reasons is the farther the distance, the larger the wire you need, and so it gets really expensive. Wire is not cheap stuff, and copper wire is going to cost you a lot of money. Generally, with a 12 volt or 24 volt system like this, you want to keep your wire runs to about 30 feet. So we're about 30 feet from his cabin, which we'll show you here in a minute. And the other consideration is you want to get proper angle and tilt. Now, we already know where our sun comes up. Where does our sun come up over here?
From the east.
From the east. Our sun comes up from the east. It travels across the sky. Now, in summer, it will be very high. Okay? In summer, that sun will be way up high in the sky up here. Now, we're getting into fall and winter. It's down lower in the sky at an angle about like this. So in wintertime, we've got these set for an angle that will collect the maximum amount of sun. He's got these set at 45. You want to grab your angle down there?
Yeah.
He's got these set at about 40. Step over here so you're in the camera.
A super fast way to check it, if you have a speed square that has a level on it, you just make sure it's level, as an example. And you'd actually want to be on the side of the panels so you can measure it. But we checked before, and we're approximately 40-degree angle.
Okay, so here in our latitude where we live, that is the proper angle. Now, if you live somewhere else, if the closer you are to the equator, your angle will change. Okay, so this is set for his angle, my angle in this area for winter sun. Now, in summer, you would want to lay these out flatter, almost straight up and down or perpendicular to the ground so that you would get that really high sun. In wintertime, you want a lower angle, and so that's what's nice about these ground mount systems. These can be adjusted, so you can set these at different angles, whereas if you had these mounted to a roof, you wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah. Now, our sun comes up over in the east, travels across. We want to make sure that we get the maximum amount of sunlight at noon. That's when we want it, because these panels can't tilt with the sun. Okay,
it's almost noon.
And we're almost at noon now, and so our sun is at noon. And the easiest way to do this is old school way, is to use something, a straight stick, and I'm just using a lighter here. Put that in the middle of your solar panels like so, and then hold it, and then you will see an angle. And actually, you won't, because there's no angle coming from it.
Yeah, so that's your finger.
So if I was to put this out here, you'll see that there's almost no angles. It's almost straight on, straight up and down.
Yeah, there's the shadow.
So if you aim this at the sun in the center of your panel, okay, your shadow will tell you how far off you are if you do this at noon. That's noon sunshine. That's the old school way of getting the proper angle and tilt for your solar panels. Now, we've got these. I won't say they're perfect, but they're close enough for country boys, okay? And so we're very close with the proper angle. We're very close to his midday sun. So then he's going to get optimal sunshine, and that's real important. Solar panels only work with sunshine. You want to get the maximum amount of sunshine. You want to make sure that you don't have any shade. He doesn't have any trees or anything like that around here. It's a white out in the open, so he's not going to have to worry about that. But if you've got trees, bushes, shrubs, anything like that, you want to move them away from that. Make sure you don't have any shade, because if you get shade on one panel, it'll affect all the panels. And it doesn't take very much shade. About the size of your palm is enough to completely shut down the entire system of shade.
Really?
Yeah, because it will block off the cells, and the ones, especially when they're in series, because these are hooked up in series. If they're in series, it will actually affect all of them and bring them all down to the production of the one panel.
Because each one relies on the other.
So it will, if one panel is producing, these are probably 75 watt panels. if one panel is only producing 30 watts because it's got blockage on them, all the other panels, even though they aren't shaded, are only going to produce 30 watts. Okay, whoa. So that's how much drastic change you can get by having shade. Also a good reason you want to come out and check on your panels, clean them off. If you get leaves, debris, anything like that, or anything that's shading them, make sure you get that all cleaned off. Okay, folks, now we're inside Van's shed that he's converting into a cabin. You can see he's got his insulation stuff going around here. He's done videos of that on his channel if you want to look at his cabin and get an idea and follow him, what he's doing here. But what we're going to talk about is the rest of this system. Now, we talked about solar panels. That's a 400-watt set of solar panels out there. And you need some way to control the voltage and amps that's coming in from those solar panels. And you want some way to store that battery, store that power. We're going to store that into a battery. And this is a LiFePO4. That stands for lithium iron phosphate battery. It is a 12.8 battery, but they consider that a 12-volt battery. Okay, generally they're called a 12-volt battery. This is a 300 amp hour or 3,840 watt-hour battery. So this is a big battery. And it is a LiFePO4, which means that this one has a BMS called a battery management system in it. And LiFePO4s have the advantage of being able to store a lot more power. They have more capacity than a flooded cell battery or an AGM. They can be drained much lower, so that's why you get more capacity. And a battery like this, when charged up, it will charge up probably in about 8 to 10 hours of good sunshine would completely charge up this battery from that system out there. Oh, wow. But because you're not going to be using this all the time, you're not going to be draining it down and refilling it. In general, in just 4 or 5 hours that we get in winter sunshine here will be enough to top this back up for your use every day. Now, this battery, as you can see, is fairly large. It's about the size of 3 standard 12-volt batteries, but it's much, much lighter. These LiFePO4 batteries, for weight-wise, they're about a half the weight of, say, a flooded cell or an AGM. So they're much more convenient. Now, the drawback of LiFePO4, though, is this one without a heater. Some of these they do still have heaters. This does not have an internal heater, so it needs to be kept warm. So that's why it is being kept inside here with him. But these batteries do not off-gas at all, okay? There's no dangerous gases that are going to build up or collect inside here where you're going to breathe in. They're a completely sealed battery, all right? So very, very safe battery, and they're the only ones that are recommended that you can keep inside with you. You never want to use a flooded cell battery or an AGM unless the AGM is sealed. And designed for that. You can use AGMs inside, or you can use LiFePO4 inside. The flooded cell batteries, they have to be kept outside because they off-gas. They can actually explode, and the gases are dangerous to your health. Okay, so we've got the battery here. Then up above that, you can see we've got the rover controller. Now, this is a rover that is designed for made by Renogy, that is designed specifically to work with LiFePO4 batteries. Now, that's real important. When you get a controller, not all controllers are the same. You want to make sure that your controller matches your solar panel, volt and amps, which we talked about, and also matches the battery type. These rover controllers I really like because you can get them and they will match up with whatever panels you're working out there. So if you're working with a system up to 100 volts, you can maximize the amount of panels that you're going to get on it. And they work really well with the LiFePO4 batteries, and they have a very good LED readout, which is why I like them, especially for people that may not be all that familiar with solar, because you got all the readings, which I'll show you up here, and you can set this very easily. Now, he's also got an inverter. Okay, now an inverter is used to convert the DC power, because batteries are DC, direct current. It's going to convert that into AC power, alternating current. That's what pointed that down there. Yep. That's the inverter down here. It's the one that I did a review on. It's the Guage RV 2000 watt 12 volt. It is a pure sine inverter with soft start. Now, this is designed to handle up to 2000 watts of maximum power. It is a 2000 watts, so it can handle 2000 watts and has a ramp up power beyond that. So you can handle up to 2000 watts with this inverter. So it would be good for larger appliances. He's got TVs. He wants to get probably a small washing machine, maybe a window air conditioner, something like that. This type of inverter will handle those larger appliances because it does have a soft start. And the reason you want to get a soft start, if you've got a compressor or a motor or something like that in an appliance,
Sometimes they require a ramp up slower, and so with a soft start, it will give it time to ramp up so that it doesn't kick off the inverter. So this is a really good inverter that he has set up here. Now you notice we've got heavy duty wiring. This is important that you match up your wiring.
That was my biggest confusion when you and I were talking. I was so confused.
Now the wiring that we're using here is a very heavy, this is like 2 gauge wire, I believe, maybe even be 1 gauge, but it's 2 gauge, I believe, wiring. And the reason is when the inverter kicks on, it has to pull a lot of power through that wire. If you don't have large enough wires that is the proper gauge for an inverter, it can cause those wires to overheat, possibly burn out, or it will kick off the inverter so it won't work. So it's important that you match up your wiring. Then from the controller, what we have is we have 4 8-gauge wires, and this is what's recommended by the manufacturer. These are 8-gauge wires going in. These are the 2 wires that are coming from the solar panels. We've got a red positive and a black negative. They go into the left side in here. You slide them up into the slots, and then you screw down the screws. And make sure when you do this, I've seen this mistake a lot of times. Make sure that these are good and snug. A lot of times people will say, well, my controller's not working. Most of the time, if they go and check these wires, one of them has become loose and they're not getting a good connection. Now, when you're hooking up your systems, it's always important that you hook the battery up to the controller first. Okay, always hook them up in that manner. Battery first to the controller. Don't hook your solar panels in first. The reason is the controller has to read the battery. It has to read it and tell what voltage it is. And then you also have to set it. And there's settings on this, which are really easy to set, but you want to set it for the proper battery. We set this for what says Li, but that stands for a lithium. This is a lithium type battery, LiFePO4. So we've got it set for LiFePO4. And we checked to make sure that it was working with the battery and was already set. Then we connected the solar panels, and that's these 2 wires here, and they go into the solar panels, and it's got very clear directions of what goes on here. You've got connections for your solar panels, and it's just 2 wires. You got connections for your batteries, and these are 8-gauge wires that are feeding the battery and keeping the battery charged up. And then you also have an output for 12 volt. If you want to run small 12 volt things like lights, you can actually run them off of these 2 connections here, and he's probably going to get him some LED lights for in here. So. And then you can hook those into here too. Now I won't go through all the different settings, but this tells you how much power you've got in the battery, and this is already, we'll show you this up closer. Okay, so you can see on the LED readout here on this Renault G Rover, this is showing the voltage that is in the battery. And it also shows the battery capacity, and it says that this is full. Now, people will say, well, why does it show 14.4 volts if it's a 12-volt battery? 12-volt batteries have to charge at higher than 12 volts. And LiFePO4 batteries have to be charged at about 14.4 volts. That's exactly what it's showing here, is 14.4 volts. That is what is going in. Now, people will say, well, how long will it stay on like that? LiFePO4 batteries, when they start getting full, it takes a long time. It's kind of like a parking lot with a bunch of cars all trying to find it. As the parking lot gets full, it takes longer for the BMS to find a place to store the power. Same as if you were trying to find a parking spot in a full parking lot. So it will stay up here, even though it says it's 14.4 volts. It's very minimal amps is going in, and the BMS is telling the battery to store this so that it maximizes the capacity in the battery, completely filling it up, and that's what you want. That's what keeps all the cells balanced. Now, once it is completely full, this will drop down to probably about 13.5, 13.6 volts. That is called float, and it will float at about 13.5 volts. Then when it stops when the solar panels stop producing power, like at nighttime, it will drop down to and it will show about 13.2 volts. That's completely normal. When the battery is just sitting without a load on it, it will generally show about 13.2 volts. Now, if you have a load on it, this will also show you how many watts is going out by flipping through. It will show you, now this shows what we have coming into the battery in volts, and this shows what we have going out. Now, right now, we don't have anything going out. Okay, so that is a basic solar power system. Now, the only thing that I didn't include in this is he needs to get a fuse link. A fuse link is just a safety feature. This is fine for now, but a fuse link will go between the solar panels and the controller, and I recommend probably a 30 amp fuse link. that will go in the connection between the solar panels. And that way, if something happens like a lightning strike or you get a short in the solar panels or something like that, it will blow that fuse instead of possibly damaging your controller. So that's the one thing that you want to add. He will order that and get that put in. It's safe right now. We're not going to have any problems with it, but it is recommended that you have a fuse link. Always make sure that your wire gauge is correct. 8 gauge wire coming from your controller and going to your batteries. And then your inverter, depending on the size of the inverter, make sure that these wires are correct here. Any questions? Go ahead.
That was my biggest concern. Like I've been researching for months and months and months, looking at other channels, how are people hooking up their equipment, or et cetera. And I just asked LaMar, I'm like, look, I'm really confused. I have a lot of experience in construction, but not electrical.
Yeah.
And I was afraid to hook up my own system because I didn't want to mess it up. And one of the biggest things I didn't know is gauges of wire, as an example. And why it was necessary. Like now that he explains it, it makes sense. You have a heavy gauge wire here from the battery to the inverter because the inverter is going to ask for a big punch.
Yeah, it's like a water hose. The larger the water hose, the more water can travel through it. Electricity is a lot like water. So if you've got something, a big load that's going to pull a lot of power through it, it needs a big hose or a big wire. Okay, so that's why we use these big 2-gauge wires going to the inverter. If you was using a smaller inverter with less power going through it, you wouldn't need to use as big of wires here. But this is a 2,000 watt inverter, and that's what's recommended for safety reasons. This is a very simple system that you can set up. Most people could set these up in a couple of hours, and a 400 watt system will run all kinds of appliances.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? If I lived for 10 years with just a 400 watt system like we set up here. All right. And if it got real bad in the wintertime, sometimes I had to recharge my battery from the generator. So I upgraded to a larger system over time. But for that 10 years, I got by just fine. I had 3 AGM batteries. That was before they had these LiFePO 4 batteries. I've now got rid of those great big heavy AGMs. They were really excellent VMAX tank batteries, but boy, were they heavy. And they only lasted, I got 9 years, so I'm very happy with them. I got 9 years out of those VMAX tank batteries. But one of these LiFePO 4 batteries, you can get at least 15 years probably on average. And so they're going to last a lot longer, even though, and this is one of the people wonder, well, why do they cost more? You get more capacity. They also last longer. And because they're sealed, you can keep them inside. You can get them with all kinds of different features. You can get these batteries with heaters in it, have internal heaters in them. You can even get them. I've got one that has a LED readout right on the battery. So I can actually look and see right on the battery what the battery charge is and what the amps and capacity are. So there's a lot of different features, more expensive batteries, and less expensive batteries. But generally, the LiFePO 4 are just an excellent battery, and I changed out all of my batteries now. And the only batteries that I will use now going forward would be the LiFePO 4. I highly recommend these batteries. Guage RV, good equipment, and that's a good inverter with soft start. So you may want to look at those. And I have done a complete review on that unit. If you want to go and watch my channel, look at that review. Again, these Renogy Rover controllers, excellent. I have 2 of them that I've been using now for about 3 years. Excellent products. I really like them, especially for people who may not be very familiar. You don't have to have additional pieces. However, you can get, and this comes with the Guage RV inverter. This is a remote LED readout. So if you want to put your inverter like in a different room or something like that, if you want your battery and your inverter and controller maybe out in a different room, you can just put this in your living room or in your living space where you can see it. And I really like this because this shows the battery voltage up here. It shows how many watts are going out, what your voltage is up in here. And this even has a temperature gauge on it. So it's really nice. A good feature, and he's going to hang that on his wall up here so that just at a glance, and this is what I do in the morning. When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do, I glance at my readout to see what my batteries and solar is all doing. See if everything's working right. I take one quick look at it. I know everything's working right. That's all I need to know. It's going to be good the rest of the day. And once in a while, I just take a look at that readings. Generally, once you have these systems set up, as long as you don't have problems with your panels, with getting shade or something like that, they're pretty much hands off. There's very little you have to do with them. You set your rover to the correct battery, you set it to the correct voltage, if your wires and everything are connected correctly, they're pretty much hands off. There's really nothing more that you need to do with them. And this 400 watts will run all kinds of small appliances, run your lights. If you have a water pump, it'll run a 12 volt water pump. And you can run direct 12 volt off of this too, which we'll talk about maybe sometime in the future. You can get the clamp on 12 volt extension cords with the cigarette plug style lighter on them. And you can run 12 volt appliances. Any of those sorts of things you can run directly off this battery. At the same time, you're running 110 volt. So, and this inverter also has a USB plug, so you can charge directly from USB, small things like your phones, any USB gadgets like that. You can charge those up directly from it. And you can run all kinds of small cooking appliances. He can run his micro swamp cooler, so he can stay cool here in the summer, which is what I also use at my cabin. Those will run just fine off of one of these like this. But if he wants to put in a bigger window unit, he'll also have this system in power if he wants to power something larger. All right. Any questions?
I would love to share my personal experience. So for the last year and some odd months, I've been using the EcoFlow.
Yeah.
And those are fantastic. I love it. It's very readable. You know what power you have coming in, going out. But like he had mentioned on our previous video, if any part of that ever fails, there's no way you're going to repair that. Here, I love it because the components, you can replace one if one goes bad, etc. But I was scared to hook it up. I'm not going to lie. I was very afraid because of electricity, the danger of fire potentially, arcing, etc. And I was extremely nervous about it, but he came in today and spent the time with me and showed me just how simple it is. One step at a time, one wire at a time. Here's why we do this. Here's why we use the gauges like he had explained. And I feel super comfortable. I can definitely hook this up myself now.
Okay. Yeah.
There's no doubt.
I don't think that, with just a little explanation of why we do the things that we do with solar, it shouldn't scare you too much. They're not dangerous for small systems like this. Now, I want to separate. If you're getting into a grid-tied system, or you're working with hundreds of watts of panels on high voltage panels, if you get over 70 volts, that's considered a danger level, where that you could get electrocuted with that sort of stuff. With 12 volt and 24 volt systems, they're very safe. Whereas if you get into the bigger systems that have over 70 volts coming through their systems, those can be a bit on the dangerous side. You want a little bit more experience. You may want to get someone with experience to help you set those up. But a system like this, with a system like this, anybody can set one of these up. If you just go online, go to my channel, watch videos, go to a solar forum. There's guys like me on solar forums on Facebook that will happily help you set up a system, talk you through it, and explain to you what you need to do. All right, anything else you'd like to add?
I just really want to say thank you very much. I know you
Very
help a lot of
welcome to do
folks,
it.
and it's nice to be local, to have them help me in person.
Excellent.
Now that we have the power hooked up here in my little tiny cabin, we hooked up a couple of things temporarily. Got the beer fridge there and my 43-inch screen TV here. Initially, when I first turned the fridge and the TV on, it was doing about 200 watts. But now that everything's cooled off and doing well, TV's on and everything, it's 39 watts usage. And got the equipment here and everything, and super happy to start bringing in all the appliances and everything in here.
All right, folks, that's it for today.